Hey everybody, we're the Benchwarmers. Thanks for having us back. Sorry we were off last week. Just trying to get one more podcast in before the end of the year. Gabe, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you? We're a little bit penned in, waiting for Omicron to come catch us all. Do you think there's like a Hebrew lettering system we could be using for the COVID variants?
That's an interesting question. I think after the these are Greek letters, right? And
Yeah,
after that, they got to go to some other system. Like it's not going to be like COVID, variant alpha gamma. Like they can't go to double letters kind of thing. I think they
right.
got to go to a different language. So I
Hebrew
think
would be a good one.
yeah, I mean, I think it would probably contribute to some terrible anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. But aside from that,
Oh, there aren't any of those about the coronavirus, are there?
no, of course not. Why would there be a rash of conspiracy theories that wouldn't all just boil down to anti-Semitism in the end?
It's
Anyways,
very, very true. But I wonder if what the scariest Jewish COVID variant would be. Like, are there scary Jewish letters? I know you and I have talked. Like the Omicron variant is scary. We're both really terrified for whatever the Omega variant is going to have.
well, I think the answer
variant,
is
Omega is going to
that
be rough.
variant cough would be the worst because that just sounds like a cough. The cough, coof. The pronunciation is a little different, but it's close there. I think Reish also sounds bad.
Reish would be bad. Any of the Sofit letters.
Yeah.
Like a Tzadik Sofit would be a really rough. Like
variant,
that is the end.
Variant Mem Sofit. That sounds very, very ominous.
That would be very, very. Nun Sofit as well would be very much so.
Yeah. Well, Gabe and I
Nun Sofit is the name of the secret operation to destroy Catholicism.
Well, Gabe and I are on our own again. Today, we're going to have a little feature running down as it's our last show of the non-Hebrew calendar, our last show of the year. So we're going to run down some of the, biggest and best and most interesting, most memorable Jewish sports moment of the year. Little year-end list like everybody else does. Got to get that SEO and get that listicle work going, even in podcast form. But before that, we get to that, a little bit of Jewish sports news as always to get into. Someone who we've been trying to get as a guest, unfortunately, is very busy because of the time of year and because he's coaching the team. Is
the Maccabees are very busy at this time of year. Traditionally,
it's a busy time of year for the Maccabees. So Elliot Steinmetz, coach of the Yeshiva men's University Maccabees basketball team, someone we've been talking to, trying to get on, and hopefully we'll schedule an interview that can go ahead in the new year soon. But as we're recording this, it's December 15th, and the Maccabees just won their 50th straight game. Can you believe it, Gabe?
And I cannot. It is a miracle worthy of Hanukkah. This is we're at more than 8 quarters of we thought the winning streak was only going to last one financial quarter, but it's made its way to at least 8 now. So yeah, it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
So going back, and we talked about this before, I'm sure we'll talk about it again, hopefully with Elliot, and as the streak continues into hopefully the Division 3 tournament. The streak goes back to the 2019-2020 season. They were undefeated and in the Division 3 March Madness tournament, which was canceled because of COVID. Last year there wasn't a tournament, and I don't think there was a national champion declared for the Division 3. And so this year is their chance both to have an undefeated season, and even if they don't have an undefeated season, to go to the Division 3 tournament and become national champions. They're ranked as the number 1 team right now.
That's true. And recently, I mean, since we last recorded, their star player Ryan Turrell, or is it Terrell? I'm not sure.
Terrell,
Elliot will have to clarify. That dropped a 50 burger on some Jamokes from Connecticut. Yep. So good for him to expose everyone else with a huge game, especially sort of come between the high holidays and Hanukkah season, the miracle season, as the Jews know. For anyone who's seen the classic film Full Court Miracle on the Disney Channel, the Yeshiva Maccabees are really bringing it to life. So a big, very, very much happiness for the Yeshiva Maccabees. Unfortunately, we couldn't get Elliot this month, which would have been some nice besheret. But can we call that besheret? Is that besheret?
No, you're entirely misusing that.
Okay, well, it's not besheret. I thought besheret is like fate.
No, it means like beloved.
Whoa, no. Now we're having a disagreement between Jamie and our producer, Michael. Producer Michael, who's coming from Arizona, land of the older Jews.
Yeah, it means destiny, but it's like soulmate. People use it to mean soulmate. They
Yeah,
don't
like
use
my Basheret. Yeah, but I think
Yeah.
that's my soulmate. But you could say, oh, this is Basheret. Means it's like kismet. It's meant to be.
Yeah, but in like a romantic context, I don't think it really works in this way.
I think we could use it in another. Oh, we're getting a guest appearance, a raised hand from our producer Michael.
It's the end of the year. I don't care. Gabe is right. It means fate. But people use it like, oh, you're like, it's fate that you are my soulmate, right? Like we're destined to be together. But the broader meaning is serendipity.
Okay, whatever. I've never heard someone use it that way, and
I've never heard someone use it in any way. I just know it's a term.
That's what we use this audible medium for, is testing out words that we've never actually heard out loud. We've only read.
Exactly. So speaking of which, about a word I've never heard, but I've never heard someone say, but I'm reading out loud. I'd like to talk about the recent performance of Jan Alexandrovich Nepomniachtchi, who is the current runner-up of the World Chess Championship. Jamie?
So I looked this up, and I'm trying to do my Russian in-laws and family proud in saying it's Jan Nepomniachtchi. And I think Nepomniachtchi, and I think that's pretty close. So yeah, Nepomniachtchi was the challenger to multi-year now reigning chess champion Magnus Carlsen at the recent World Chess Championship.
One thing to mention about Nepomniachtchi is that, in the world of chess, some of the smartest and greatest minds all over the world still just call him Nepo because his name is too hard to pronounce.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And especially there's probably no sport more than chess that is like, I don't know, universally beloved by very many different cultures with very many different ways of talking. And I think simplicity of a certain sense is very, very important.
Yes. Oh, absolutely. There's sort of a lot of Jewish history in chess, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But just to talk about Nepo for a second, he's ranked sort of 5th in the world. Wasn't really expected to make a huge lot of noise this year. But over the last 2.5 years has been on a truly remarkable winning streak, sort of all over the world, winning at the Chess Olympiad, winning tournament after tournament, winning Global Masters, winning the World Team Chess Championship 2 years ago. And in this huge run, actually beat Magnus Carlsen, the World Championship, in a charity game. So that sort of gave him a lot of confidence to continue fighting, continue winning, all the way to winning the candidates tournament, which is sort of the reigning champion plays the champion in the candidates tournament every year. And Nepo won it sort of spectacularly. He only won by half a point, but it was a cap on a really spectacular, multi-year chess cycle to then get, I would say, politely beat by Magnus Carlsen. Nepo unfortunately didn't quite have it at the tournament, but he certainly made a lot of our Jewish chess fans proud. There's a long history of Jewish chess players, and we'll talk about that. He lost
7.5 to 3.5. He tied a number of games, but he didn't win any, I don't think, outright.
No.
And the commentary that I read seemed to suggest that he sort of made a few bad blunders in the 2 games. And I think
he got beat in, I think, 3 games. And in one of them, there's a GIF that's going around the internet of Magnus Carlsen like shaking his head and kind of
he couldn't believe how
bad
the blunder was. Yeah.
Couldn't believe how bad the blunder was, which is not great.
I think just, ultimately it's one of those games where, obviously the strategy is incredibly important, but all the people playing at this level are, well-versed in the strategy. Some of it is just the sort of mental stamina of being able to compete these, crazy, weeks-long tournaments, 8-9 hour games. And
American chess grandmaster Fabio Carauna, who's roughly in the same age, same generation, runs marathons, not as a hobby, but for training for chess.
Yeah.
Is that the marathons are the training so he can, continue thinking while putting his body through a ton of stress.
Yeah.
And apparently he's a really good marathoner too.
So Gabe, you mentioned the sort of Jewish history of chess, not something we've talked about in great detail. I think we are on team chess as a sport because, why not? Jews are probably overrepresented in chess more than any other sport. And that's largely, Russian or former Soviet players who excelled. But the one American example that comes to mind, obviously, is Bobby Fischer, who had, let's say, a complicated relationship with Judaism, especially towards his later years.
I don't know if it's even that complicated. I think he just decided it wasn't for him, or should have been for anyone. Bobby Fischer famously was raised Jewish, from Chicago. Was the World Chess Championship and a Grandmaster for 4 years. I mean, Grandmaster for a long time, but was the World Chess Champion and the number one in the world for a number of years. And then throughout his entire life has sort of been a very prominent self-hating Jew. Since at least the 1960s, he's been recorded with some pretty serious rants against Jewish people. And then
Holocaust denial, like Hitler worship, like really the worst of the worst. I think, there's something, there's that sort of cliched term about the line between genius and madness. And he was sort of the embodiment of that, I think, for a lot of his life.
Oh, absolutely. So apparently, apparently Fischer, was privately anti-Semitic since the 60s, and then only sort of came out with it in the 80s. And then in 2005, he decamped to Iceland, where his mental state deteriorated further. As we go into the end and until the end, he was sort of left alone in Iceland to continue his anti-Semitic screeding. So Bobby Fischer, while once a Jew, I don't think we want to claim him anymore.
Yeah. I mean, there's a few, less nebulous stories. Gary Kasparov's one that comes to mind, born half Jewish in Azerbaijan. I think, identifies with his Jewish half, at least to a certain degree.
I think nowadays he says he was raised Christian, and I think was sort of the dominant part of society and, high class Azerbaijan at the time. And now is a lot more in touch with Judaism, also from a sort of a global citizen perspective.
And we should mention as well Judith Polgar, the Hungarian chess champion, who's I think considered by many to be one of the strongest female players in the history of the game. She's in her 40s now, but in the 90s and 2000s, early 2000s, she was one of the highest, probably the highest ranked woman, or I think achieved the highest ranking that a woman had ever achieved.
Absolutely,
still a pretty impressive thing.
Israel, notably, apparently, Grandmaster is a ranking you achieve from playing quality players. Israel has the most Grandmasters per capita.
Wow.
So even more than Russia, even more than, a lot of countries in Eastern Europe, there is even more than America. There's a huge tradition of chess in Israel that continues to this day. One notable fact, obviously Kasparov takes up 20 full years of this, but up until 2005, over half of all individual world chess champions were Jewish.
Wow.
Cool. There was only 13 because Kasparov held the title for 20 full years, but 7 of those 13 were Jews.
Very cool. Gabe, why don't we move on to talk about some of our favorite or most interesting, most notable Jewish sports moments of 2020. Do you want to start us off with one?
Absolutely.
2021.
2021.
Sorry.
We can also talk about 2020.
The COVID is getting to me a little bit. And I think all the Omicron discussion is making me think that we're back in March 2020 all over again. So the great moments of Jewish sports in 2021.
Great moments of Jewish sports. I want to start us off with probably the most mainstream Jewish sport moment, which is the 2021 World Championships of the Atlanta Braves, one of the more Jewish baseball teams in history, featuring Joc Pederson, the Bad Bee with his string of pearls, who was proudly Jewish, and Max Fried, who might be, not only is very Jewish, but sounds, looks, and, is sort of Jewish. We talked about that, is very, very, as my uncle would say, obviously Jewish.
Right.
As they say on the broadcast, he's a big fan of Sandy Koufax, which might be the confirmed bachelor of the 2020 Jew set.
Well, I think the Braves are great because they had both Fried, who is the sort of, Jewish, very, typical Ashkenazi name, Ashkenazi
bookish. He's a bookish man,
cerebral pitcher kind of type. And then also the more crypto Jewish Joc Pederson, who, I think is the first Jew named Joc, first of all, whose last name is Pederson. He's half Jewish, but proud of it and has talked about it. And he's more of the Joc Pederson's Jewish. I never knew that. So
what's the opposite of a Mike Jacobs All-Star? Can we decree it a Joc Pederson All-Star?
The
Someone
Jewish
who you don't
athlete
think is Jewish, but is?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, so that was a great story. I mean, they also Alex Bregman obviously as well, and Garrett Stubbs. It turned out in the end played for Houston in the World Series, and what was written widely as I wrote widely about as the most Jewish World Series ever, and I think that was a very cool thing.
And obviously, Fried, just to put it up there, is that he pitched the clinching game of the World Series.
Yes, and did an excellent job.
Really, brought it home sort of across the high holiday season, which is something we are very, very proud of.
Right. Well, jumping off from that, we should say that there was a sort of conclusion to a long cycle in baseball for a Jewish team in a different light, and that was, of course, the Israel baseball team at the 2020 Summer Olympics. And so, I think the notable story here is just Israel as a whole at the 2020 Summer Olympics. It's really by leaps and bounds the country's most successful Olympics ever. 4 medals, including 2 gold medals at the Tokyo Games. Linoy Ashram won the gold medal in the women's individual rhythmic gymnastics competition. Artem Dolgopiat won the gold medal in the men's floor exercise. There was, I think, more athletes at the 2020 games than Israel had ever sent. Now, a large part of that was the Israel baseball team, and we've talked about this a lot. The team ultimately didn't make it to the podium, but they fought hard. They came pretty close. It was, I think for us Blue Jays fans, a very sad Jose Batista walk-off home run that ended Israel's time in the baseball tournament. It's sort of hard to fathom that's the way, or sorry, a walk-off hit. It wasn't a home run, but hard to fathom that's the way it ended. But still, it was an amazing culmination of a multi years of Israel baseball. The Israeli baseball team just sort of overachieving and making it to the Olympics. And I'm anticipating a new World Baseball Classic that's going to come, and an Israel baseball team that's just going to grow and grow and get stronger and stronger as years go on.
A good opportunity to share a big muzzle tov with our friend of the podcast and inspiration, Nate Fish, who just before the tournament was named, or just after the tournament, I should say, was named manager of the team.
Yes.
Which was a long time coming. And, we know he's going to take that World Baseball Classic team to new heights. He's a very well-connected and well-beloved guy at all levels of baseball. And if anyone can build a great team of Jewish players, it's him.
Yeah. And I should say, in terms of looking at the future, we will be, of course, following the Israeli delegation to the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics, anticipating that it's going to be smaller than the Summer Olympics delegation. But Israel has never won a Winter Olympics medal. Maybe this is the year. Who knows? That's something, certainly a big story to keep an eye on in 2022.
The Frozen Chosen.
Yeah. See if any of the
bring
Frozen
you lots
Chosen
of coverage of the Frozen Chosen over the next 2 months. We've got some great guests and great conversations lined up, ready to talk about it. And we'll look to covering the Olympics from all perspectives soon.
Gabe, any other big moments from the year that you want to talk about?
Yeah, this one isn't so good, but I think it was worth discussing, which was sort of the anti-Semitism fracas that enraptured Meyers Leonard, NBA player Meyers Leonard, who used some anti-Semitic language on a Twitch stream while playing one of the killing video games. I don't know which one, but one of the military cosplay murder ones. And he dropped some anti-Semitism, which obviously we don't like. He, was a starting player, a rotation player on the team that had made the finals less than a year earlier. Miami's a big market, the Jewish owner, and a lot of Jewish fans. But one thing I actually think is worthwhile is that even though he did an incredibly dumb thing, and the video is there of him, and a hateful thing, of him answering the phone where someone says, "Listen, you got to end your stream now." He, it seems, took some actual time to apologize and get involved in the Jewish community. I think
that's probably the good thing to focus on. I mean, it's unfortunate that he said what he said, but he has sort of, I think, acknowledged that he is deserving of some punishment, and he's done his best to make amends. We live in an imperfect world, and he wants to make it a little better by at least changing his own ignorance and embracing that.
For sure. Unfortunately, it might have ended his NBA career. He was released in March, just after this happened, and hasn't played since. Didn't sign with any teams now, which is not too bad for him. But, I think he has a lot of time and a lot of energy to focus on repairing relationships and spending time in the community, which honestly in Miami, it looks like he's doing.
Yeah, I think it's probably unlikely that he'd be back with Miami again, just in part probably due to the size of the Jewish community there. I saw Pat Riley was recently asked about him, and he said he thinks he'll be back in the NBA at some point. Again, Pat Riley's in charge of that to a certain degree. He could sign him to be on the Heat if he wanted to, but he hasn't. So that's probably one door closed, but there might be a chance for him to go somewhere else. And I think that in an ideal world, famous people, athletes, anyone doesn't say anti-Semitic things on live streams of them playing video games. But if they do, it is good to see them make amends or try to make amends and do better. And circling back on that last thing I mentioned, did you see the trailer for the new television series about the Showtime Lakers?
No, I didn't.
Because Adrian Brody is playing young Pat Riley.
Ooh, that's a good look. Does he have the slick back hair?
He doesn't. It's like, I think it's a little too early for him to have like the slick back hair, because that was more like 80s Pat Riley.
Yeah.
But I don't know. If I was Irish, I guess, Irish American, I think I'd be a little upset about the Adrian Brody casting and the not bring some truth to it.
A rare Jewish Nicholas. His middle name is Nicholas, so it's a very rare Nicholas.
Okay.
To be Jewish. Half Catholic, half Jewish. Pat Riley, I think, is about as Catholic as they get. So it's interesting to me that, you get a Jewish guy to play him. I'm happy for it. But when we go back to talking about sort of the anti-Semitism, there was a debate recently on the NBA Reddit that was wondering if Meyers Leonard converted to Judaism after learning about all of the things about Judaism. Would he be allowed back to play for the Miami Heat? Would the Heat bring him back if he converted? Or as some commenter said, pull a Tim Watley.
Pull a Tim Watley. Converting just for the chance of playing NBA
just for the chance of playing the NBA again. Or just for the jokes, but in a bad way.
As you know, I think conversion is a relatively long process for most people. So if that's his route back and he doesn't come back for another few years, like, I don't know if that would have been the smartest way of getting back to the NBA. But if that's how his journey, if that's where his journey takes him, that's fine. I guess I'd be surprised if that's where it goes.
Do you have another memory of 2021, Jamster?
Yeah, so something else I want to say, not exactly on a sad note per se, but a sort of marking time that we noted around the same time, I think last spring, was that one of the greatest Jewish football players of all time, Julian Edelman, retired. Julian was, of course, the first Jewish Super Bowl MVP. He won multiple championships with the New England Patriots. Unlike his other teammates at that time, he hasn't unretired to go back to play for the Bucs. And one last championship.
He was so proudly Jewish. I can't think of a lot of NBA player or other NFL professional athletes who wore the big chai under his jersey.
Yeah,
he was out there.
And that, I think, is one of the most interesting things about Julian Edelman. His father's Jewish, his mother's not. He didn't really identify or talk about his Judaism a lot in the early part of his career, and then he was spurred on in large part, I think, by the Etz Chaim pogrom and the response to that to, both publicly embrace his Judaism, to show it. He wore cleats with the, hashtag stronger than hate slogan on it. And, Etz Chaim on his cleats when the NBA does its sort of, cause month.
He wore a Israeli-American relationship pin for a lot of his career as well.
He's been vocal about it. Going back quite a while ago now, when there was another anti-Semitism controversy with Deshaun Jackson, Edelman was very vocal about that and sort of, calling him out and calling him in to sort of talk about that and address those remarks. And, there was talk not that long ago about him studying for his bar mitzvah. So he's embraced it publicly and privately. And I think, for a lot of guys, he was a visibly Jewish guy. He's a short receiver. He was he had a Jewish last name. People knew he was Jewish, played in Boston, played for a Jewish owner and had a Jewish teammate, Nate Ebner, and was just a guy I think everyone in the community really embraced. He was scrappy, He was the kind of great white hope football player that
great Yiddish hope,
that people tend to glom onto. Just a guy with a lot of heart, and that's why he won a Super Bowl MVP. He wasn't the most physically dominating guy, but he was able to put together a really impressive career.
And tying it back to Meyers Leonard, he was one of the first pro athletes to respond to Leonard. Sent an open letter saying he would take him to Shabbat dinner with his friends in Miami, and sort of show him about what Jewish people are really like, which takes a mensch to do something like that, especially when faced with anti-Semitism. So I think it's a great call out to Mr. Edelman there, and sad to see him go, but happy to continue his career. One thing I didn't know about him that I learned while researching this today, he's actually the second all time in postseason receiving yards.
Yeah.
So he's got one of the greatest playoff careers ever. Sort of almost a Sandy Koufax of the NFL playoffs.
I think that really puts him on the list for guys who might make the Hall of Fame. It's tricky because his career numbers are not as good as you might need to get into the Hall of Fame, but his playoff numbers really put him over the top, and in some regards, and 3 rings as a Patriot are pretty impressive. Like, there aren't even that many guys who were on the team for all 3 of those later Super Bowls. So it's something to consider, and we'll see what happens in the future. Certainly winning the Super Bowl MVP is a sign of what his playoff prowess was.
It's almost sort of a cap on the end of his career.
Yeah. Gabe, any last moments you want to mention, things from the year that you wanted to talk about?
I mean, we've talked about a number of them. I think something that's also in my mind, worth discussing from, a number of positions, as you mentioned, Team Israel baseball team, but obviously we want to give some shout outs to Sue Bird, who won yet another championship, another record championship, and another gold medal to her career. So, I feel like we talk about Sue Bird a lot, and her trophy case is always filling up, but it was another banner year for Sue Bird, getting engaged, obviously. So a mazel tov to her, and winning both, I think it's her 5th gold medal and her 4th championship ring. Right. So, a huge summer for her, which I obviously want to talk about. And another sort of big, exciting Jewish move is that not only does the city of New York now have a team in the National Women's Soccer League, but they have their GM is Yal Averbuch, who was Jewish and played for the U.S. national women's team too. So from, on the women's sports side, there's a couple of really exciting and Jewish triumphs. I think Averbuch would be the first, certainly the first Jewish GM in that league. And I think in all of North American soccer, but not the first, obviously not the first female GM in the women's league. There are many, but still a huge milestone.
Good for her. Yeah, absolutely. Good for her. One other thing I just wanted to mention as well as something we've covered in the past, and I'm sure we'll talk about it again with our future guest, hopefully Elliot, but his son, Jake Steinmetz was drafted in the 3rd round of the MLB draft this year, and was sort of written about at the time as the first known practicing Orthodox player to be drafted in the MLB draft. Ellie Kligman, who participated in some of Israel baseball's games. I don't think at the Olympics, but afterwards at the European Baseball Championship, was also drafted in the 4th or 5th round. And, they're both Orthodox Jews, observant Jews, and maybe they'll be the first guys to, observe the Sabbath and make it to Major League Baseball.
And still, it would be extremely cool that if they, say he winds up, they play a game in Chicago, it's a 4 p.m. Friday start, after the 6th inning, the sun's going down and he calls his own number, says, "Coach, I gotta go." I think that would be great. Just sort of a real Koufax on Yom Kippur moment for the people.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this before, that there's so much pressure on these kids. They're, 17, 18, 19 years old when they get drafted. And, even if they have success in the major leagues, that might not start until 4 or 5 years from now. So it's hard to talk about any of this with, any sort of certainty that they're going to do this or that. Baseball is a bit of a crapshoot, but obviously we wish them well. And it's something we'll be following for the next many years.
Absolutely. Are there any, I'm happy to chat about, any of this continuing on. But we should probably wrap up this show. If anyone has any more thoughts of their favorite Jewish sporting moments of the year, please send them our way on Twitter. One thing we'd like to leave with you for the end of the year, because we're not sure we're going to speak again. Producer Michael, who's decided to insert himself into the participation of this episode. Would you like to share with us your favorite Jewish sports moment of the year?
Oh, he's shy, folks. You gotta clap for him. You gotta clap for him. He is shaking his head.
No, I would not, Gabriel. No, I think he would. I'd love to hear it.
I'll mention the tweet I sent to you guys the other day of the Toronto Raptors official Twitter account pointing out how Fred VanVleet spun like a dreidel to finish a move. I thought that was a nice moment. I enjoyed seeing that reference.
It would have been even better if they didn't tweet it out more than a week after Hanukkah ended.
Yeah, that's true. I would say that if you are, or you know who is the Raptors Twitter person,
it's true. If you
and
are
whether or not they're Jewish, if you are that person, let us know, and we'll feel free to talk to us about what inspired that tweet.
I'm going to guess if you are that person and don't yet listen to this podcast, as soon as someone tells you about it, you will.
Yeah. One last thing to mention about this year, 2021, that's been a whirlwind. The other big Jewish sports highlight in our lives, we came back. This podcast was gone. The Canadian Jewish News unfortunately shut down in April or May 2020, and was revived, first in podcast form and online newsletter form in the early parts of 2021. Or maybe even the late parts of 2020, but we came back as a podcast. We started off with some great interviews, and I think we've had some unbelievable episodes this year talking about Jews at the Olympics, talking about Israel baseball, talking about Israeli and Jewish athletes in all different ways, talking about anti-Semitism and really important issues. We've been joined by some fantastic guests. I'm not going to name them all, but really just fantastic guests up and down who have been so generous with their time. And, we hope to continue doing this as long as they'll let us, and continue to bring you interesting stories, interesting interviews, and all the sort of, news of Jews and sports. So I want to say thank you to Michael, our producer. Thank you to the Canadian Jewish News, all our friends and fellows on the Canadian Jewish News Podcast Network. Thank you. Thanks to you, Gabe, for being here with me. And, this continues to be a fun highlight in an otherwise bleak world.
It does. We just want to bring you joy, and we'd like to continue to extend that thanks to you, the listening public, as we come piping into your brains every fortnight through your headphones. We will be back in 2022. So we'd love to, if you kept on this journey with us, because we feel that the show just keeps getting better and better. Our guests are getting more and more exciting with more fun stories. Some of our favorite episodes of the year, you'll hear some great conversations from sports all the way from football to soccer to wrestling to basketball. We've had guests of all stripes on the show, and we're going to continue to do so. So thanks again to you, the listeners, for sticking with us through this long and rough year, but we'll be back next year, and we continue to ride this momentum.
Hunker down for Omicron. All our episodes are on there, whatever podcast app you use to download them. Find our old episodes, find the things you're interested in, share with your friends and family. And, we'll see you soon in a few weeks back in 2022.
Guys, I've got it. Lag but Omicron.
Nice.